It's very much. Oh, I'm echoing. Does that sound okay?
It sounds okay. Maybe just turn the volume down on your keyboard or on your device. That's probably just echoing back a wee bit, but it's not a big problem, so don't worry too much.
Okay. Well, I think this is an opportunity to talk a bit more about one part of my presentation. Well, it kind of covers all of it, but the thing I'm we're focusing down on is landowners and swimmers engaging and how we can work together. So I gave examples from a whole range of different water bodies, different types of landowners, different attitudes to swimming, whether they allow or not. But there are common themes of swimmers acting responsibly in all these places proactively. But probably one of the really crucial things about this that's come through today is that's all very well with perhaps the obvious swimmers that kind of already know stuff. We already try and reach people who know a bit, but not very much. But we also need to reach the what VSG calls the new visitor. They're not all new, by the way. I think it's worth knowing that a lot of these young people you see have been coming for years, and their older brothers before them, and their older sisters and their mothers before them. But anyway, the people that people are most concerned about. I think, first of all, so I'll just tell you what I think we're going to cover very quickly is just see if there's any questions about those examples or things you want to bring up about them. If anyone's got any other examples that they think would sort of bring some extra information to the day. And then I think if we could just quickly come and see what thoughts people might have on what it is, from landowners in particular, what it is they might want to need from swimmers and to happen, what swimmers can offer. What are the benefits of engaging between landowners and swimmers, and what are the challenges of making that work? So that's all the things I think we could cover. So just over to you to contribute, really.
Hi Imogen, it's Ian Axford Hawkes here. Hopefully you can hear me. So I work for the National Trust. I'm an operational risk business partner, and my patch includes what used to be the Northwest region. So I'm lucky enough to look after the Lake District. The Trust owns almost a fifth of the Lake District, and obviously a lot of that includes water bodies. Obviously, we had a bit of a shock last year when lockdown first happened, and we were having lots of people coming to the lakes, and many of those people wanted to sit beside a river or a lake, and a lot of those people wanted to then, because the weather was so good, to get into it. And I'm sure everybody's seen the media stories and the pictures on the news of the litter-strewn lake sides that were left behind, and it was quite a shock for the Trust as an organisation to begin with, and certainly our initial approach, and I think probably, to be fair, also of the Lake District National Park Authority, was to try and police these visitors. And certainly early on, we had a lot of people had been furloughed, so the skeleton teams that were left behind were really hard pressed, and we started referring to people as the wrong type of visitor. They weren't our normal visitor that we normally welcome to the lakes, and but we soon realized actually that was completely wrong, and they certainly, everybody and the Trust as an organization has to, our whole ethos is to encourage people out into the countryside to experience it in their own way, and basically we were having people experience it in a way that we'd not encountered before. And I think that's where our challenge has been, is how can we engage with this new audience? As you say, they've probably been coming before, but how we can engage with those people. The organised, responsible group of people, swimmers, we don't have a problem with, but it is this new audience is how we can best engage with them.
Yeah, thanks. That's really interesting point. Anyone like to come in on that? Oh, I can see, sorry, I can't read. Russell, is it?
Hello, yes, I'm Russell Robson. I work for the Environment Agency. I also chair Rutford's Inland Water Safety Forum, and have found today very valuable. And it's very pleasing to see the work that your organisation is doing regarding good practice. I think I go back to Ian's comments. I mean, I try not to address people as responsible or irresponsible, and we do have a problem with our organisations and our organisations' level of risk acceptance, and also the fact that inland we have a very diverse water environment. So whilst the tarn in the Lake District has certain characteristics, that lake in a lowland location may not be the same. Deep water quarries, rivers, etc., riparian ownership. And I think it is getting a coherent message about the hazards. I mean, the Environment Agency and also ROSPA, many of you will have seen in the new guidance to water safety on inland sites, is getting the message over about the hazards to people, and then enabling them, as you said at the beginning of your presentation, for them to make the appropriate assessment. My question is that, as you alluded to, and it links with Ian's, is that a lot of people have discovered inland water as a result of the lockdown. You can get to a beach, to all intents and purposes, rather than driving from the coast. I live in the Cotswolds, and I can be much further from the sea, but I've got 3,000 people in Oxford enjoying the beach. There is an expectation over the last 18 months to 2 years. What people used to do has now become something of an expectation or a right amongst users, and their ability to sort of engage with riparian owners has lessened, and they feel that, well, it's a river, no one stopped me, I know what I'm doing and I can get in. And that is my concern, is how do we get this message to those people that are on the peripheries, the casual user, even the well-informed, and I might be pejorative, the all-knowing Guardian reader who is deciding to float and look at the stars and said, there's an 18th century bathing pool here, I have a right to go in. Well, you might do, but that was 200 years ago and the situation has changed. How do we get to both the ill-informed and those that believe they are over-informed and know possibly more than I do, but possibly less than you do?
I think that's a really good point. I'm going to ask Isabel to come in. I think she's probably going to pick on those points.
Oh,
Isabel?
You're on mute.
Hey, beg your pardon, I thought I'd unmuted. I'm Isabel, I'm Izzy Howie. I'm an open wild water swimmer from Sheffield, and I'm also I'm a public health worker, and my kind of specialism, if you like, is behavioural work, which we all know from COVID has been absolutely critical in terms of the segmentation of different levels of understanding and different motivations, and different kind of opportunities to kind of learn about what's actually going to help keep people safe. And I put in the chat really that is the key. You know, there is a term in kind of understanding circles, in behavioural circles, called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and often people don't have a high level of awareness. You know, if their knowledge is low, they don't have a high awareness of what they don't know, and actually they can get themselves into all sorts of trouble in all sorts of fields of work and activity, because the little knowledge is, as we know, a dangerous thing. So, you know, partly it is a knowledge transfer, and depending on who you're talking about, you know, they're going to be more or less receptive to actually engaging with that knowledge transfer. I have a 14-year-old son whose ability to take on what advice I offer him is very limited, and these are absolutely the sorts of people that we're concerned about when we talk about people who jump into open water and get themselves into difficulty. So there is a skill element in there, and you know, I did take him to swimming lessons when he was a kid. So you know, we've got things that we can do with different bits of that segmented market to try and increase their knowledge, their skill, their understanding, and their motivation, very importantly, to actually follow what we're seeking to get them to do. And I thought the presentation was it Carleen did at the very end, you know, about the different messaging. You know, we will need to adopt very different messaging for different groups of people. You know, I agree with you. You know, irresponsible and responsible is a bit judgmental, and actually probably we ought to say knowledgeable and less knowledgeable, motivated, less motivated. You know, have they had the opportunity, you know, to actually gain the skills and knowledge that we would want them to have to swim responsibly or to use water responsibly? And that's all I was going to say, really, is that bit about segmenting it for different groups of people, because we you know, we can put up tons of signs, but my 14-year-old will probably just walk straight past them and just go, you know, yeah, my mum told me about that. You know, I know all about that. So that's all I was going to say.
Thanks, Izzy. Chris, I can see your hand. Is that a timing thing, or do you want to come in, or shall I?
No, it was just a very, very brief point, but Isabel or Izzy has articulated probably much better than I could. I think you're exactly right. We don't like talking about responsible and irresponsible. Quite often the irresponsibility is maybe down to naivety or lack of knowledge rather than malice in any way. So that's really important. I think not directly related to this, but in Northern Ireland we have done a lot of work over lockdown with the new visitor. Isabel, Imogen, I take your point that they're not all new, but the volume of new visitors is certainly the issue. And really, we've developed something called the right side of outside. Now, it's not necessarily angled towards the use of open water, but it's the use of the outdoors and how to do that in a responsible manner. And the key bit there is not being seen as Big Brother talking down to that group. The messenger is very important. So working particularly with social influencers, so the right people is speaking to the right person and tweaking the message in a much different way than we would in a countryside code, for example, but actually still getting the same points across. So it's a marketing stroke communications challenge as much as anything, and that has heightened greatly in the past 15 or 16 months. So I echo a lot of what Isabel High has just said. And in terms of timing, you've still 10 minutes left, so we have plenty of time.
Okay. And now I can see that people are putting their hands up, but I can only see one name at a time. Sorry, Chris, this is a technical. I don't know how.
Yes, Andrew Price, I think, was next. Imogen.
Okay, Andrew, please come in.
Yes, Imogen, and Isabel as well. Actually, I've been a safety advisor for a very long time at the Canal and River Trust, ex-British Waterways, as it were. Yes. And to go along with what Ian says, we've experienced quite a lot of mass swimming. I often call them mass events, you know, as in like it must be a social media thing where there's a certain location where people turn up and you get 70, 100 people there. And it's not about managing that expectation. I don't think you can manage that expectation in the way you just have to let it happen and unfortunately tidy away the rubbish, you know, in most cases. But I genuinely think, and I'm speaking generally about the Canal and River Trust because I've been there a long time, we have been very reluctant to engage open water swimmers. Very reluctant, as in like, historically very reluctant. And and now we're known as I know there's someone from the trust here, and I know we are a well-being. We promote ourselves as a well-being organisation now. And I just think we promote stand-up paddleboarding, we promote kayaking, we promote canoeing. We genuinely need to get better at promoting, in certain cases, open water swimming as well. And that's just a general case. You know what I mean? I think we still can be entrenched in we don't allow swimming, and I think that's not necessarily the right approach anymore.
Well, I'm delighted to hear it. Yes, and you know, who knows who these 70 to 100 people, whether they're in any even loosely organised way. But I mean, I'm not trying to make a distinction, by the way, between the different types of swimmers, although it might have come across that way. But I think you've got us as a resource, if you like. So we might not reach all of those new visitors, but we can at least try. And I think, you know, working together and with perhaps local authorities. I don't think many. I mean, a few were invited, but I don't think any have actually managed to come. But I mean, apart from Izzy in her work role, but you know, there's a whole different range of authorities and organisations, and the landowner and the swimmers could at least try and do that in various ways, like, you know, targeted, as Izzy said, and so on. Anyway, sorry. Who was next, please, Chris?
Vicky Carter is next. Imogen.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm Vicky Carter. I'm a wild swimmer and podcast director. I have a podcast called Swim Out. And I spoke to Owen Heyman actually recently on my podcast, you know, about swimming in reservoirs, and actually a little, you know, and he talked very passionately about, you know, how wonderful it is to be able to get into some of those great reservoirs up in Sheffield. And I found myself feeling increasingly angry actually as I walk around London, where we have an enormous amount of water actually, especially in Walthamstow. We've got all these brilliant reservoirs, and everywhere you go there are these horrendous signs that just say no swimming. And I'm as a swimmer, you know, having sort of started to think about it, I am feeling more and more angry. And I think a lot of it for me is, I mean, I don't, you know, I know there are dangers in water, and you know, so I want to be careful. So I would like much better signage, but the blanket signs of no swimming on water that looks to me perfectly safely swimmable, I'm just, yeah, I find that frustrating and upsetting.
Thanks.
To say.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, we have on the Outdoor Swimming Society an article about reasons why it might be appropriate to swim in reservoirs and how they might be much more suitable. And in some places, like in Sheffield, there's not much alternative. But I won't talk about that, but just to highlight that exists. But I think what's interesting today is there's already been people here who previously, and like a colleague who just spoke, sorry, Andrew, and Mark in the chat, people from those sort of waterways already saying they want to do a bit more dialogue on this. So I think we're really moving in the right direction. I think it's fantastic to see that happen. And this guidance that's coming out through VSG is, you know, absolutely a really, really useful way for people to do that. So it might take time, but I think the tide is turning in that way. So I do hope that we can do that. And at the same time, obviously, tackle the sort of issues that go along with that, the proper message and so on. Anyway, how are we doing for time? Shall we take some more?
Yeah, you've 5 minutes left. Just to warn folks that we do get whisked straight back out. There's not much time for a final farewell in the meeting room. So just in case it does happen. But Bob, excuse my pronunciation, Bob Berzins is next on the list there.
Yeah, hello. Yes, can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Yeah, right. Yes. Hello, Imogen. Yeah, I spoke to you and Susie Weeway about swimming access in the Peak District. So I'm from the Peak District Local Access Forum. We're a statutory committee that advises the National Park Authority on access and recreation, and we recognise that there's an awful lot of people who want to go swimming in the Peak District and almost nowhere to do that legitimately. We also had a presentation earlier this year from the two people who are involved in the English Right to Roam campaign, and certainly their kind of aims in terms of water access are to bring sort of English access laws more into line with those that we see in Scotland. I have talked to the National Park Authority and local authorities about changes in legislation, and the reply really is quite disappointing from them, because it tends to be, well, we just work with whatever legislation we've got in front of us. So in terms of lobbying or promoting for changes in access legislation, then they don't really want to get involved in that. And I suppose this may also apply to Canal and River Trust and National Trust and other bodies like that as well. But if we did have some changes in access laws regarding water, what would people like to see there? I mean, certainly with the Crow Act 2004, that affected public rights of access on foot, and it removed owner liability for things like rock climbing on their land. So owners could be happy that those sort of activities could go ahead, and they wouldn't be liable for any injuries. So do we need some changes in legislation there? And if so, what would people like to see? Thank you.
Well, thanks, Bob. I'm not sure we're going to have time to go into that much now, but it's an important point for the future. But I think whether we have new legislation or not, it doesn't stop landowners choosing to, in the proper way, as Will's described and so on, enable access. You know, it doesn't, we don't, I mean, we want legislation, obviously, I'm very keen on that, but we don't need it in order to make that happen. We just need to work through these issues, I think, anyway, that's my opinion. So, well, so just to say, as we've got another, I think, 2 to 3 minutes, I think we can take 1 or 2 more, but we need to make, well, I need to try and sort of gel down the things you're saying into a few points to report back to the plenary by the end. So, yeah, sorry, Chris, could you cue the next person for me, please?
Yeah, next is Claire Rizano.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So I work at Canal and River Trust with Andy, and I work in the communications team. One of the things I'm sort of leading on from Vicky's point, and it's very interesting hearing about you as a swimmer wanting to sort of go into all the different pools of water. Canal and River Trust obviously has loads of canals and rivers and reservoirs and docks, and some of them are suitable and some of them aren't. So my challenge is making sure that the message that we give out, okay, so that person needs that message over there, but they can't have the same one over there. So what if they travel around the country? Do they think it goes the same? So it's just trying to work out how to best communicate to people in the right location. Okay, right ages, only if you're in that group. So that's quite a challenge. That's all I wanted to say. I realise we've got not much time, so I'll stop now. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really useful point. And I mean, I think there are a few key basic safety messages to do with what you can assess and basic things you can do, but how you actually get it to people will vary, I think. So yeah. So what? Time for another one, Chris? Another?
Go for it, but we may get
Okay, so,
whipped out at breakneck speeds. But go for it anyway, rather than sitting in silence.
Yep. Next person then. Who's that, please?
Apologies, that's my job. Oh, my screen is frozen.
They were there.
No, it's not. Sorry. Russell was going to come back in quickly, just to think.
Hello. Yeah, it was just one of it was a sort of revolutionary approach. It was to suggest that the Pandora's box is open and that we should recognise that open water, use of open water in inland Britain is now here, and we need to look at the public safety risk assessment more effectively and zone many more water bodies more effectively where there is prohibition, where there probably is the possibility for access. And the other one is to perhaps lobby government to make sure that there is a clear owner of water safety policy within Britain. Present time, we get the HSE is used to, which is a fairly blunt